President Trump's swift order to deploy 500 additional National Guard troops to Washington, D.C., following the tragic shooting of 2 guardsmen by an Afghan national, is a dramatic intensification of the administration's policy of using military forces for domestic security. This decision, built upon an already controversial August crime emergency deployment, has profound legal, political, and social implications. Summary and analysis. The deployment is a direct and forceful response to the ambush-style attack on 2 West Virginia National Guard members near the White House. The suspect, identified as Ramanullah Lakhanwal, an Afghan national, paroled into the U.S. under the Operation Allies Welcome program, provided a clear political narrative for the administration that both crime and lax immigration policies pose threats to the nation's capital. Analysis. The militarization of domestic security. The surge of troops raises critical questions about the militarization of civilian law enforcement. The initial deployment in August was justified as a crime emergency and federalized D.C.'s local police for a period. The current total of over 2,700 National Guard members, many from out-of-state units, is carrying out duties traditionally reserved for police, such as high-visibility patrols and traffic control. The major legal challenge stems from the Posse Comitatus Act, which generally bars the federal military, including federalized National Guard, from enforcing domestic law. While D.C.'s unique federal status grants the president more authority than in a state, a federal judge has already ruled the deployment likely unlawful, putting the administration in a position of appealing a judicial order while simultaneously escalating the very action being challenged. The deployment is viewed by critics as using the military to project political power and normalize the presence of armed soldiers on American streets. Reasons and consequences. Reasons for the deployment. 1. Immediate security response. The primary stated reason is to restore Capitol security and respond aggressively to an act of terror and a direct challenge to law and order. Attacking a military member on patrol is an escalation that demands a highly visible deterrent. 2. Political message. The deployment sends a strong political message, aligning with the administration's law and order stance. By linking the shooting suspect to the Biden-era refugee program, the action simultaneously addresses perceived threats from crime and immigration. 3. Assertion of federal authority. D.C. is a Democratic-led jurisdiction. By increasing the federal military presence, the administration is asserting superior federal control over local governance and law enforcement, circumventing the wishes of D.C. officials like the mayor. Consequences of the escalation. 4. Constitutional and legal conflict. The deployment intensifies the existing legal battle against the deployment, potentially forcing a decision by a higher court on the limits of presidential power to use military forces in domestic policing. 5. Erosion of public trust. Critics argue that placing armed troops in civilian areas erodes public trust in the nonpartisan nature of the military and creates fear rather than security, particularly in communities where the presence of militarized forces is already fraught. 6. Strain on military resources. Using thousands of National Guard members for extended domestic policing and cleanup duties distracts them from their primary missions, such as training for combat or responding to natural disasters. And 7. Heightened tensions. The sheer visibility of a larger armed military force will likely heighten political tensions in the Capitol, which could lead to increased friction between federal troops, local police, and D.C. residents. Prediction and solutions. The administration will likely use the shooting and subsequent deployment to press for 2 main goals: judicial validation of broad presidential authority in domestic deployments and the reevaluation of the entire refugee and asylum system. The deployment will likely remain in place until the judicial stay expires or a higher court intervenes, as the administration will argue the ongoing security threat necessitates the troops. Politically, the issue is expected to be a major talking point in the debate over national security and immigration. Proposed solutions. 1. Judicial and legislative clarity. Congress must update the Posse Comitatus Act and the Insurrection Act to clearly define the president's authority to use military forces domestically in the 21st century, closing the legal loopholes currently being exploited. 2. De-escalation and local autonomy. The federal government should withdraw the out-of-state National Guard troops and revert primary control of law enforcement to the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, which is better suited for community policing. Federal support should be financial and technical, not militaristic. 3. Invest in community policing. Divert the significant cost of maintaining the military presence to long-term crime prevention strategies, such as funding for local police, mental health crisis response teams, and youth programs, which address the root causes of crime rather than merely adding a military deterrent.